Have you ever woken up on a cold morning, buried under a mountain of blankets, and still felt that little shiver? We flick on the central heating, maybe grab a hot water bottle, and we're cozy in minutes. But what if you didn't have any of that? What if you lived hundreds of years ago in a drafty, stone or wooden house, when winter wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a legitimate threat to your survival? How on earth did medieval people stay warm at night? The answer is so much crazier and more ingenious than you think. It involves sharing your bed with strangers, questionable hygiene, and a piece of furniture you've definitely never considered a heating device. Stick with me because we're about to uncover the bizarre and sometimes downright dangerous ways our ancestors fought the biting cold of the medieval night. And trust me, you will never look at your comfy, warm bed the same way again. So let's set the scene. It's the year 1350. The sun has gone down, and a chilling wind is whipping around the walls of your home. There's no double glazing, no insulation in the walls, just wood, stone, and maybe some wattle and daub, which is basically a mix of mud, straw, and, well, animal poop. The gaps in the walls and the unglazed windows are stuffed with rags or dried moss, but it does little to stop the relentless drafts. Your first line of defense is, of course, fire. But even this isn't what you imagine. A wealthy lord in a castle might have a massive fireplace in his great hall. Sounds cozy, right? But these early fireplaces were incredibly inefficient. Most of the heat went straight up the chimney, which was a relatively new invention itself. Before that, you just had a central hearth in the middle of the room, with a hole in the roof to let the smoke out. This meant your living space was constantly filled with a choking, eye-watering haze. You'd be warm, but you'd also be slowly poisoning yourself with smoke inhalation. And here's the kicker. This main fire was often extinguished at night. The risk of the entire house, made mostly of wood and thatch, going up in flames was just too great. A special bell, known as the curfew bell, from the French couvre-feu, meaning cover fire, would ring to signal it was time to bank the embers for the night. So the main source of heat is gone. Now what? You retreat to the bedroom. For the vast majority of people, this wasn't a private room. In a peasant's one-room cottage, the entire family, parents, children, and sometimes even grandparents, would sleep together in one large bed, if they even had a bed. More likely, it was a straw-stuffed mattress on the floor. And when I say together, I mean packed in like sardines. Forget personal space. The goal here was simple: shared body heat. It was the most reliable and cheapest source of warmth you had. But it gets even more communal. They didn't just share with family. Often, they would huddle down with their animals. That's right. Your cow, a few sheep, or some chickens might be brought inside for the night. They served a dual purpose. It kept the animals safe from predators and thieves, and their body heat contributed to warming the small, enclosed space. So imagine trying to get to sleep next to your dad, your sister, and a gently snoring pig. It's a far cry from a king-size memory foam mattress. Now let's talk about the bed itself. For those who could afford a proper bed, it was a completely different beast to what we have today. The medieval bed was a fortress against the cold. It was a massive wooden structure, often intricately carved, and it was all about one thing: trapping heat. You'd have a straw-filled mattress as a base, which provided excellent insulation from the cold floor. On top of that, you might have a softer feather bed if you were well off. Then came the layers: woolen blankets, fur throws from animals like badger, fox, or even cat, and linen sheets. But the real game changer was the curtains. Heavy, thick curtains, often made of wool and lined with other fabrics, enclosed the entire bed on all four sides, and sometimes even had a fabric ceiling. When you drew those curtains, you were creating a tiny, insulated room within a room. Your own body heat, and the body heat of whoever you were sharing with, would get trapped inside this little fabric box, creating a pocket of warm air. It was incredibly effective. So effective, in fact, that people often slept, sitting partially upright, propped up by pillows. The fear wasn't just about the cold, but also the belief that lying flat was the position of the dead and could invite death. Plus, in a smoke-filled room, sleeping upright kept your head above the worst of the smog that lingered near the floor. But they had other tricks up their sleeves. Tricks that seem a little odd to us now. Before getting into bed, you might use a bed warmer. This was a long-handled metal pan, usually made of brass or copper. You'd fill it with hot embers from the dying fire, close the lid, and then run it between the sheets. It was essentially a medieval electric blanket. The problem? If an ember escaped, your straw mattress could go up in flames in seconds. You had to be incredibly careful not to set your bed on fire right before you were about to get into it. And here's something you definitely haven't tried. They would heat up rocks or bricks in the fire, wrap them in cloth, and place them at the foot of the bed. These primitive and slightly clumsy hot water bottles would radiate a gentle heat for hours. It's a simple but effective piece of thermal engineering. Now, for the really mind-blowing part. We've talked about huddling together, animal warmth, and bed curtains. But the most insane, and perhaps most overlooked way medieval people stayed warm at night was through their diet, and, believe it or not, their alcohol consumption. Winter diets were heavy. They were packed with calories, fat, and protein. Think thick stews, bread, preserved meats, and root vegetables. Digesting this heavy food is a process called thermogenesis. It literally raises your internal body temperature. They were essentially stoking their own internal furnace with food. But the real surprise is the role of alcohol. They drank a lot of it. Beer and ale were staples of the diet for everyone, including children. In the evening, they would often drink posset, a concoction of hot milk curdled with wine or ale and spiced with things like nutmeg and ginger. These spices were also believed to have warming properties. So you'd have this hot, alcoholic, calorie-rich drink right before bed. It would make you feel warm and drowsy. The alcohol widens your blood vessels, which brings blood closer to the skin, creating a sensation of warmth. But here's the twist, and it's a dangerous one. While that boozy, hot drink made them feel warm, it was actually a deadly trap. That feeling of warmth is your body losing heat faster. The widened blood vessels on your skin are radiating your core heat out into the cold air. So while you're drifting off to sleep feeling toasty, your core body temperature is actually plummeting. For someone who was already on the edge, perhaps malnourished or elderly, falling asleep drunk in a freezing room could easily lead to fatal hypothermia. They were tricking their own bodies. The very thing they did to feel warm could have been the thing that killed them in their sleep. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? The solution was also the poison. Let's talk about some real stories that paint a picture of this. We have records from monasteries, which were often better built and heated than the average home. Monks, however, slept in communal dormitories, and their rules often dictated a simple, austere life. Yet even they had allowances for the cold. Chronicles from the Abbey of St. Gall in Switzerland show detailed plans for a warming room, the calefactory, which was one of the few places a fire was kept burning through the winter for the monks to warm themselves. They would go there before bed and after waking up. It was a vital part of their routine. For the nobility, we have letters and household accounts. We read of kings ordering expensive furs from Russia to line their cloaks and blankets. The account books of King Henry III of England in the 13th century show huge expenditures on firewood for his private chambers at the Palace of Westminster, and for wax candles, which also gave off a small amount of heat and, of course, light. But even a king wasn't immune. In the drafty stone castles, despite their huge fireplaces and luxurious tapestries hanging on the walls to block drafts, the cold was a constant battle. The king and queen would have their bedchambers, with their heavily curtained beds, but their servants would often sleep on the floor at the foot of the bed, providing an extra layer of human insulation and security. Contrast that with the story of a peasant family. We don't have their written letters, but we have archaeological evidence. Excavations of medieval villages show a common layout, a longhouse, where one end was for the family and the other was for the livestock, often with only a partial wall in between. The body heat from a cow is significant. It's like having a 1,000-watt heater running all night. It might have been smelly, noisy, and deeply unhygienic by our standards, but when the alternative is freezing to death, you'd probably take the cow. So the next time you crawl into your bed and you're not sharing it with your entire family, a few farm animals, and a stranger who's just passing through town, maybe take a moment. The simple act of sleeping alone in a warm, quiet room is a luxury our ancestors couldn't even have dreamed of. Their world was colder, darker, and far more communal. They fought the cold with ingenuity, community, and some frankly dangerous ideas. It's a powerful reminder of how much our world has changed, and how a basic human need, the need for warmth, shaped the very way our ancestors lived, slept, and survived. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey back in time as fascinating as I did, hit that like button. And for more insane stories from history, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. Stay curious.